Started.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Terry Deidesheimer, and I am honored to serve ProVale as the chair of our board of directors. And I'm just thrilled to welcome you tonight to our second Lighting the Spark event. We're happy to see you all this evening, and I want to extend a particular welcome to those of you who are new to ProVale. Welcome all. We're really excited to introduce you to the work that we've been doing here in the Puget Sound for over 80 years. We've been serving with people with disabilities for that long, and we're so excited to have you meet some of the wonderful people that make up our community. As I mentioned, I serve on our board of directors, and I'm honored to work side by side with many of our ProVale staff and some of our other volunteers. ProVale is particularly important to me because I am the parent of a child with learning disabilities. And my son Thomas has used ProVale's employment services, and it's really wonderful to see young people like Thomas grow in confidence and in professional presence as they go out and apply for jobs and they interview and they join the workforce. And ProVale helps make that happen. It made that happen for Thomas and for others like him. And having meaningful employment is so important and so crucial to inclusion. And so that's why I'm working with ProVale and so proud to be part of the organization. And now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce ProVale CEO, Mike Hatzenbeeler. For over 2.5 decades, Mike has made it his life's work to support people with disabilities to make sure that they can live their life's choices. And I'm really honored to serve alongside him. Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Terry. I am honored to serve alongside you as well. Thank you. We are incredibly fortunate to have Terry as the leader of our board of directors. We have an amazing board at ProVale, a group of folks who are super engaged. Many of them are joining us tonight. Grateful for Terry's work on the board, also her work to spread the word about ProVale in the community. And we're also really grateful for her generous support as a donor. She and her husband, Tom, have been fantastic donors and great at involving their network. Friends and associates in our fundraising work as well. So thank you very much. I want to add my personal welcome to everybody and thank you for being here. We appreciate you taking the time. We know you got a lot of things to do on a Wednesday night. And so we're grateful that you're spending some time with us tonight. My name is Mike Hatzenbeeler, as Terry said. I'm the CEO. And Terry noted, I've been with ProVale for about 25 years, a little over 25 years. I've been the CEO for about 20. And the best part of my job has always been introducing our organization to people, sharing our story, talking about how our work creates pathways of inclusion for children and adults with disabilities. And I'm happy to have an opportunity to share a part of that story with you tonight. But before we get into that, I'd love to ask you to join me in an activity, little bit of engagement activity before we get started. Think a little bit about why we're here tonight. What is it that we care about that brought us to this event? And so I'd like to ask you 3 questions, and I'd love for you to share your answers to these questions in the chat. So you can see them on the screen now. So what do we gain when we have the right job? When you think of diversity and inclusion, do you think about people with disabilities? And finally, what is the difference between an inclusive community and an accessible community? Or is there a difference? So we'd love to have you share your answers in the chat. There is no right or wrong answer to any of these. We're just kind of hoping to hear what your thoughts are, what your perspective is about these topics that relate to everything that we do at ProVale and our work to create inclusive communities for the people that we support. Again, those questions, you can see them on the screen. What do we gain when we have the right job? When you think of diversity and inclusion, do you think about people with disabilities? And what is the difference between an inclusive community and an accessible community? You don't have to answer all of them. You can answer one if it particularly strikes you as more important. Whatever your thoughts are. I can see some folks. Drew, I love that. Happiness and worth. Amel, one of my favorite shirts says, if your definition of diversity doesn't include disability, you're doing it wrong. That's great. Terry Coe, welcome. We gain a sense of belonging. I love that. Belonging is definitely a big word. I think a concept that we're beginning to appreciate a lot more when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion for everybody. Freedom. Yeah, love that, Terry. Corrine, with the right job, you gain confidence and grow self-worth. And yes, I do think of disabilities when I think of inclusion. That's great. I like to hear that. Great thoughts. Feel free to share any other ideas that you have about it. One thing I think about, and Terry's commenting about their accessibility, the distinction between accessibility and inclusion. Accessible is being able to go to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. That's a great way to frame it. We definitely talk in our statement of kind of our vision statement as an organization that we want to see a community that maximizes accessibility and inclusion for exactly those reasons. Accessibility is critical to be able to get out and engage in the community, but if you're not welcome when you get there, then something's still missing. So we definitely want to see both. Peter, we gain satisfaction both on the employee and employer sides from the right job. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And our focus, for those of you that don't know, and you're going to hear a little bit about this tonight, our focus in our employment program is to make sure that we're helping people find the right job, not any job, not a job that we think is right for them, but help them identify what's the right job in their eyes. Well, those are great thoughts. Thank you so much for engaging in that conversation. Appreciate your thoughts and your ideas. That's really great. So this is a pretty extraordinary year for Provail, and you heard Terry talk about it a little bit. You heard Kyla talk about it earlier as well. This is our 80th anniversary. Our work started in 1942 in a small classroom here in Seattle on Warren Avenue, down where the Seattle Center is now included. In the 80 years since, we've grown to be one of the largest and most impactful disability service organizations in the region. We were founded, some of you know this story, we were founded by a group of parents of children with cerebral palsy who had all made the decision to keep their kids at home rather than send them to live in a state institution, which was the norm at the time. These parents were driven by the value of inclusion, much the same way that we are today. Like any parent, they wanted to be included in their children's lives as they grew. And they wanted their children included, seen, heard, and welcomed in the community. It was a small group of parents, less than a dozen, who committed themselves to building and growing an organization that would grow with their children. From that first classroom came vocational programs to help children pursue employment as they became adults. From there came residential programs to give them an opportunity to move out of the family home and connect with their peers and the rest of the community. For a time, the organization actually became too focused on service models that were less inclusive than they could have been. But about 27 years ago, actually just before I came to the organization, a commitment was made to do everything possible to focus on service delivery methods that would maximize inclusion, personal choice, and opportunity. The focus areas remain the same as those established by those founding parents, because we've learned that those are the places that are critical to that pathway to inclusion. And our work in each area starts from the same foundation, recognizing that every person can and should have a right to choose for themselves what their life should be like. We support individuals with disabilities to identify their goals, and then we put our support services to work to help them pursue those goals. One thing that makes Provail unique is that we are able to support people through their entire life, beginning with a focus on mobility and communication services for school-age children, bringing the power of assistive technology into the classrooms to ensure that they can learn and engage in school right alongside their peers. As they prepare to finish high school, our focus shifts to helping them secure a paid job and helping them transition from the school system to the adult service system. We believe that young adults with disabilities should have the same rate of employment after high school as their peers without disabilities. And you heard Terry talk about how important that was in her family as her son was going through that same stage in life. And one of the more exciting things happening at ProVail in our 80th year is that we are launching a new program to help those young adults take the next step towards inclusion by supporting their independent living goals through our new home care program. So mobility and communication, employment, home and lifestyle, those are the areas that we focus on with the ultimate goal that people with disabilities we support experience a life of inclusion, choice, and equity in their schools, their jobs, and living in the community. That's what we're all about. We're happy to have you here tonight to learn a little bit about that and learn about how we work to create a pathway to inclusion for all of the individuals that we serve. So now it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Glenn Ramsey, someone that we've had the privilege to support on his pathway to inclusion for many, many years. I met Glenn when I first came to ProVail back in the mid-90s when he was living at our residential facility in Shoreline, which he's going to tell you a little bit about tonight. I've enjoyed watching Glenn move down his pathway to inclusion with the support of every part of ProVail. And we asked him to be a part of tonight's program because his experience clearly illustrates how that lifelong approach with customized and highly personalized services can lead to a life full of great experiences and maximum inclusion. Glenn and I used to get to visit regularly when he would come into the ProVail clinic before the pandemic. Glenn would often greet me with a what's up or a what's new, and I would usually complain about the Mariners, at which point Glenn would often ask some version of, why do they have to be so bad? I really look forward to those visits happening again when we're able to be in person more, but maybe there'll be some good things about the Mariners for us to talk about, Glenn. We can only hope. Last week, I met with Glenn to ask him about his experiences with ProVail, and we recorded that conversation so that we could share it with you tonight. We talked about his history with our organization, his time working with ProVail, and the staff members, Gabe, Jose, and Tess, who support him to accomplish his goals. So we're going to play that video for you in just a minute. After the video plays, Glenn is going to join me on screen with Gabe and Jose, so that we can have a question and answer session. Tess isn't able to be with us tonight, but we'll have Glenn and Gabe and Jose, and you'll have a chance to ask all three of them questions through the chat. So as the video is playing, feel free to start thinking about those questions, start putting them in the chat. And then we'll be ready to, Jessica Michaels, our Director of Development, is going to scan the chat for me and feed those questions to me, and we'll have a moderated discussion. So with that, I think let's go ahead and play that video. Hi, Glenn. It's good to see you. Thanks for taking some time to join me.
We're going to pleasure to be here with you today.
All right. Yeah, it's great to see you. I miss getting to see your face often here at ProVail, so it's great to get to see your face on the camera. I look forward to when we get to see you over here in person more regularly. But we're going to talk a little bit today about your life with in the community and your experience with ProVail. And we have set up some questions in advance, and you've had a chance to program some answers into your communication device. So I'm going to go through and ask those questions. I know that Gabe Ligo from our assistive technology team is there to help with the technology, but maybe we could start with just having you introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Glenn Ramsey. It is my pleasure to be here with you today.
All right. And you're using, as I said, you're using a communication device and some other adaptive hardware that you have mounted on the tray on your wheelchair. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the equipment that you're using?
I was able to get an iPad through ProVail and the telecommunications equipment distribution program. Gabe helped me get it set up so that I could use it myself. It has given me many more options to choose from in my life.
Yeah, that's great. I remember a time when you had a different communication device that did not have as much, it was not as easy for you to communicate things with folks around you. So this seems like it's been a big improvement. Are you ready to jump into the questions? Okay. All right. Well, the first question would be, how long have you received services from ProVail?
I have been with Prevail so long that I don't remember when I got there. I arrived at the UCP Residential Center sometime in the 1980s. And I have been working with the clinic and supported employment since they first opened.
All right. Yes, it is hard to remember back that far. For folks who don't know, when Glenn talks about the UCP Residential Center, he's referring to the United Cerebral Palsy Residential Center. Before we were known as ProVail, we were known as United Cerebral Palsy of King and Snohomish counties, and we operated a large residential facility in Shoreline between 1977 and 1999. And that's where we first got to know Glenn. So thanks for taking us back in history. All right. So now you live in the community. You moved out of the residential center and you've been living in Shoreline for quite a few years. Can you tell us about your house and the people that you live with?
I have lived at the same house in Shoreline since I moved out of the UCP Residential Center in 1998. I have had many housemates while I have been living there. Right now I live with Darlene Etchew, Jeffrey Shire, and Gayla Osler. Sometimes we have meals together and watch our favorite TV show in the living room. Some of us would also go to computer groups together at Prevail each week. I always enjoyed that. Migusti and Jose are two of my regular staff at the house. They and many others help me out a lot at home.
All right. Yes, we miss seeing you at Computer Group, and we're looking forward to having that start back up again. Yeah, I know you're looking forward to it too. Yeah. Well, so that move from the residential center to your house was a pretty big change in your life. You want to talk a little bit about what that meant to you, why that was important, how it has changed your life?
I started out living at the res, that's what we called the residential center. I shared a small room with my good friend Andy Goff. I lost many housemates, and I missed them. But I have also made good friends at my house. Many of my life choices were made for me at the res. Then I got to move into my own house where I decide how I want to live. For example, I get to choose what I want to eat.
Yeah, that house that that you and Darlene and Jeff share and have shared for a long time in Shoreline is a pretty important place to you guys. I look forward to being able to come out and visit you guys again and sit out on the back deck and enjoy the sunshine, and maybe we can get some strawberries planted again back there. That'd be all right. Okay. So as I mentioned before, Gabe is there helping you with the technology. Gabe's been a pretty important person in your life for quite a while. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with Gabe?
I have worked with Gabe since way back at the res. Now he does occupational therapy with me and helps find easier ways for me to access things in my life. I like working with Gabe when I go to Prevail.
All right. So we've talked about how your living situation has changed, and we've talked about a little bit about your technology and Gabe's support for accessing technology. But the other important thing that goes on in your life is employment. And it's been important for you to have a job. That's been an important goal of yours for a long time. I know for a while you were self-employed. You had your own small business here running our snack shop at the Prevail office. But now you work at Walgreens. So would you mind telling us a little bit about what your job at Walgreens is like?
My job coach, Seth, did great getting me a job at Walgreens. When I get to work at Walgreens, the first thing I do is go clock in. Then I go to the front of the store and greet people when they come in with the aid of my iPad. I enjoy my coworkers. They always have a friendly greeting for me when I show up for my shift. I like being able to have enough money to go shopping and buy something nice for one of my housemates or my mom.
That's nice. I bet your mom appreciates that. Yeah. All right. Well, those are all the questions that I have for you, Glenn. Thank you so much for sharing with us a little bit about the important pieces of your life and the ways that Prevail is involved. It's really been great talking with you.
Thank you for having me today. Goodbye.
See you later.
Okay, that was great. Thank you, Glenn, for getting together with us, with me last week. So I think we're gonna have Glenn and Gabe come on screen now and join me. There you guys are. And we got Jose as well. All right. Great job on the video, Glenn. You did good. So we do have some questions that are coming in to the chat. So a reminder, if there's anything that you want to ask these guys, put them in the chat. But I'm gonna pick up some. I'm gonna start with the one that just came through here. And I think Glenn is ready to give us some answers. So you mentioned in the video that one of your favorite things to use your paychecks on is gifts for your mom. That's really sweet. I hope you got her something nice for Valentine's Day. What kinds of things do you like to buy for her?
I want to get my mom a beautiful ring with a big fat ruby on it. That is her favorite stone.
That is nice. I can picture you picking out that ring with a big fat ruby on it. That's great. Okay, thanks Ashley for that question. Whitney wants to know, do you and your housemates have a favorite show that you like to watch together?
Well, I am always up for watching a Mariners game. But now don't tell anybody, but I love watching anything on the Hallmark Channel.
Well, I'm sorry, buddy, but your secret's out now. There's 30 or so people now that know that that's your weakness, is the Hallmark Channel. All right. Okay. Let's see. One more question. Debbie. Debbie wants to know, what is your favorite thing about ProVail?
For real, my favorite thing about being part of Prevail is the independence that I have in my life. That means so much to me.
Great. All right. I know how much that means to you. You are definitely one of the strongest advocates for the concept of independence and personal choice among people at ProVail. So that's great. We have a few more questions that are coming in that are specific to Glenn, and then we have some other questions that I think Gabe and Jose might be able to help answer as well. So I'm going to kind of pick through here. Glenn, Amel wants to know, who's your favorite person in the clinic?
Don't feel like you have to answer that. Would you like to answer that?
Yeah.
That was Gabe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that would have been the answer even if he wasn't sitting next to you, I'm sure. So yeah. All right. Glenn, Terry wants to know, who did you root for during the Super Bowl? And somebody in the chat, I think, was saying that they hoped that you were rooting for the Bengals.
Bengals or Rams?
Oh, Rams. All right. Well, I guess that worked out good for you. Okay. All right. Well, now let's see. I'd like to bring Gabe and Jose into the conversation now. You heard Glenn talk a little bit about Gabe and Jose, who are two of the really compassionate, creative, committed individuals at ProVail who support Gabe. And I'd love to have you guys introduce yourselves. First, tell us a little bit about what you do at ProVail in support of Glenn and others. So Gabe, would you mind going first?
Yeah, I have been at ProVail since, as Glenn called it, the days of the res, where I started off as a CNA and working with Glenn on my original caseload. So I got to see a lot of the changes that you were talking about, Mike, taking place over decades that were just amazing to watch the changes in people's lives. But now, yeah, I work for the clinic and providing services around occupational therapy and making things accessible for clients. And so that's what I have the pleasure of doing with Glenn on a weekly basis, helping him, for example, get set up with his iPad and his adapted joystick and switch so that he can access that independently to, do things like Facebook and email, or use it as a tool when he goes to his job site. So yeah, it's been a great pleasure working with Glenn all these years.
That's great. All right, and while Jose gets ready to answer, just want to let everybody else know, continue to put questions in the chats. And so if you have questions, particularly for Gabe and Jose about how they support Glenn or other folks, what goes on in their roles, go ahead and start putting those questions into the chat. Jose.
Hi, my name is Jose Nunez. I'm the team coordinator at the ProVail House 16, as they call it. And I have only been at that house for about a year now, but really getting to know Glenn, it feels like a lot longer. He's a really, as you can see, a very likable guy. Even outside of work, people who have worked at ProVail in the past that I've ran into, if I mentioned that I've worked at House 16, they mentioned Glenn as the first person like, oh, do you know Glenn? Oh, that's awesome. He's a great guy. And so with Provale being Glenn's service provider, we're required to come up with a support plan. And so my role in it is to work with Glenn in making sure that it's a person-centered plan and making sure that he's involved in the goals that we're making that he can work towards. And so even though my role is really kind of more of a supervisor, I think my favorite thing about being a team coordinator is just really being around the house and having all these small conversations with Glenn and his housemates, figuring out his likes, dislikes, just kind of hearing his story. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I love your title of team coordinator because I do think that's a really critical part of what you do is really coordinate the team of people who provide the personalized support for everybody that lives at each house. But the piece of your role that doesn't get conveyed by that title is you're really a case manager too. You're responsible for really knowing what each person's goals are and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to help them achieve those goals. So that's a huge piece of your work, and you do it really well. We appreciate it. Okay, so a question from Peter. Peter's interested in knowing what sorts of jobs can Glenn and others with cerebral palsy do and like to do. And we don't have Tess here tonight, who is Glenn's job coach, but I bet that Gabe and Jose can do a pretty good job of answering this question. So, Gabe, you in particular, you've had lots of history with Glenn, so you know some of the different things that he has done in his jobs and how you have supported him with technology related to those jobs. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I can talk about some of the different jobs Glenn actually has held over the years that will give you some good examples. We have already mentioned that he works currently at Walgreens, where he greets people as they're coming into the store, maybe give them a piece of information regarding what's going on with the store. And so that's his latest venture. And then in the past, he ran a snack shop at Provale headquarters, where he provided yummy, nutritious, and sometimes less than nutritious treats for the staff. And Glenn also worked for I believe it was a nonprofit animal shelter, right, Glenn? Where he did some outreach type activities with them. Yeah. And it was, no. As a familiar communication partner with Glenn, I'm speaking out what I'm hearing him say. And I worked at the workshop. That's a good point, actually. Glenn is saying he worked at what was called the workshop before any of those jobs. And that was actually an old United Cerebral Palsy setup where residents could go in and do some basic activities like stuffing envelopes, where they would make, pennies on the envelope, so to speak. And that was certainly a part of the history, but also an important part of the history that we have moved past to a more inclusive future that we are in now. So yeah, absolutely, Glenn. Thank you for recalling that piece.
Yeah. Jose, from your perspective, what are other jobs that you see other folks at the house? I know other folks at the house at House 16 are working, so you can talk a little bit about that and other employment opportunities that you're familiar with that some of our clients with cerebral palsy as well as other disabilities have been involved in.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know at the moment, because of COVID, Glenn is actually the only person at the house right now that's employed.
Okay.
But reading through everyone's history and kind of their past and seeing similar things working. I know another one of his housemates who used to work at World Cost Plus World Market. Like Gabe mentioned, that Glenn used to work over at PetSmart, things like that. I know that so when an individual is looking for a job, we make sure that they have the opportunity and kind of ask them, hey, what are you interested in? Would you like to do? And relaying that information when he then signs up through DVR and then is assigned a job coach. And really, the job coach is really the person that kind of, in this case, it would be Tess, who's not here, but she's really the person that would kind of take it and try to see what kind of jobs are out there. But before all that happens, it's really seeing what they're interested in, would they like to be really involved with people, or are they more kind of want to be behind the scenes and not really wanting to do that?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Peter, I think that's one of the most important answers to your question, is that we don't have a predetermined list of jobs for people to slot into. We start on the basis, as Jose said, with what are you interested in? What do you want to do? What do you like to do? Just like anybody else would, and thinking about the job that you're going to pursue. And then based on what your interests are and your aptitudes and your skills and your experience, we go then out to the community and identify businesses that are interested in creating employment opportunities for people with disabilities. And then we customize the job to fit the needs of the business and the interests and the abilities of the individual. And we know that that ends up being the most successful way to get people into employment, where they contribute to the business. They are personally satisfied with the work that they're doing, and they're more likely to stay in that job for a long period of time. So, and ProVail is one of the largest supported employment providers in King and Snohomish County. So we do that we have about 600 people altogether on our supported employment program. So great question, Peter. Jose, you talked a little bit about this already, but would love to know a little bit more about what your job entails and what your favorite part of supporting your clients is.
I mean, really, I like to think that my job is kind of boring. If you go inside, I don't know, what do you think, Glenn? When you go inside the house, I'm usually the person behind the computer, just with a stack of paperwork, and just kind of jealous because I get to see the direct staff there really engaging with Glenn and his housemates and going on all the fun outings when they can. And I'm just, making sure that documents get signed. But, like I mentioned before, I do like having those small conversations, that sort of thing. But I really do, every once in a while, I do step in and with a little bit more, for example, I'm thinking more like medical appointments, if there's something a little more serious or more really important that needs to get done, and wanting to make sure that I get all the information. It's really assisting the individual and going to that person's appointment, and really is making sure that that person is being heard and not just the doctor just kind of checking their vitals and sending them home saying that they're okay, and really advocating for the individual if they have any concerns. And I listening to as it's really it's really fun listening to these people's stories, listening to Glenn's time at the res, as he likes to call it. Listening to it really makes me jealous, and wish that I would have joined ProVail sooner.
Okay. Thanks, Jose. That was great. Gabe, question for you from one of our board members, Mike Karomi. What is the most challenging part of leveraging the technology for Glenn?
I think that would be trying to anticipate what future needs are so that the solutions can be all encompassing of where he wants to go. It's easy enough to focus on the problem at hand, but we want to try to find solutions that continue to give Glenn choices instead of just kind of pointing him in a particular direction. So, and probably the other piece is that I guess you could call it a challenge, but also I think is a great opportunity, is that technology nowadays is advancing so fast and in so many different ways that you do have to really kind of stay on top of things a lot to know what those choices are and what we can offer to Glenn and how it might need to be modified so he can use it. But that's also a huge part of what I like about the job. It's keeps you creative and engaged and active. Yeah.
Right. So as Glenn's interests and activities change, you have to help the technology keep up with those changes.
Yes. Yeah.
So, for example, when he started working at Walgreens, were there specific things that you needed to change in the way that he uses the iPad, or other aspects of his technology that you had to make modify specific for that job?
Yeah, actually, when he first got the iPad, he used a couple of button switches to kind of scan through choices on there and make choices, which he certainly could do. But he let us know this is really slow. We want to find a faster way to do this. And actually, since he originally got the iPad, some new hardware options became available, and we were able to get a modified joystick that he can now use. That's got a big foam handle on the top, and he can use that to actually drive a cursor around on the iPad screen, which is a newer feature as well, which gives him much faster access and lets him engage with staff members and visitors at his job much faster than he used to be able to do just with the switches. So, yeah.
And that is not an ordinary iPad, right? It has some specialized apps on it.
Yes, it does. It's got one in particular is a communication app on there called Proloquo to Go, which is pretty popular within the disabled community and with folks who use augmentative communication. And it's very highly programmable. And so that lets us add and customize what he has access to engage with his community.
Nice. Okay. Question for Jose. Can you speak to any recreational pursuits that Glenn and the other residents partake in, maybe before COVID, and how do staff navigate fulfilling their interests in the community?
Yeah. So when I first joined with ProVail and they told me I was going to work at House 16, everyone that I talked to said that house is never home. Everyone that lives there is never home because they're always out doing these activities. And I would go through and look at basically every day they had something that they were doing. They were going out to Seattle Parks and Rec, some sort of event or activity that was going on. There was, as Gabe mentioned before, there was the computer group that Glenn still talks about and wishes he could still do that. If they were employed, they want to go they had a job. And it was really, it was really busy schedule. And it, like everything else, yes, Glenn's agreeing, and like everything else, it really is up to the individual. When it comes to Seattle Parks and Rec, there's obviously a list of activities that you can do. staff sit down with each client, each individual, and ask them, hey, are you interested in any of these? Do you want to sign up? And really create a schedule that way. And then after that, it's the logistics of scheduling access rides, transportation, and getting them there on time and fitting it within their schedule. Another, for some individuals, going to church is a really important thing, in making sure that they go there, and also getting their time to visit with their family. Glenn's mom, who lives in Tacoma, is, it's not too far, but for something to do every day or every week is kind of hard. So that's something that right now we do try to do at least once a month, and we schedule with his mom and making sure that he goes and sees her.
Great.
It sucks.
COVID sucks. Yes, it does.
I really miss seeing all of my friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Glenn has a whole posse of friends that he gets together with, or used to get together with, at what we call computer group at the headquarters office. And you guys get together and do some video gaming. Glenn is a mean video bowler. Yeah.
You are, yes.
Yes, you are. I was also just going to add what Glenn mentioned, one of his housemates, Darlene, another person who I've known for a long time. I know one of Darlene's favorite recreational activities is to go shopping.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've talked to her yet about helping you pick out that big ruby ring, Glenn, but you might want to get Darlene's help on that one. I would also add just that when we were talking about jobs that people can do, Darlene is one of the people who I think had one of the most well-suited jobs of anybody that I've ever met. One of her first jobs was working at Northgate Mall, delivering coffee from the Starbucks store to different people. She would take orders and then deliver their orders to them at different stores around the mall. And it was ideally suited to Darlene because there was no place that she would rather be than at the mall. So that was a great example of a ideally customized job. Okay, I think we got time for one more question, which is for Gabe from former board member Kevin Kopis. Kevin says, Gabe, thank you for your many years of service. Can you please share what makes this organization so unique and why you stayed so loyal to Provail?
The word consistency comes to my head. I have a picture of what I want to help clients achieve for themselves, with inclusion and independence and accessibility and all of these things we've been talking about. And it just so happens that that is what Provail is all about and has consistently been about. So I guess our priorities have stayed in line all this time, and I have been proud to stay on board here at Provail throughout the years, and really appreciate the strength and consistency that they put towards assisting clients to reach their goals that way. So, yeah.
That's great. I would actually turn that around a little bit, because I think it is the commitment of individuals like Gabe and Jose and 400 other folks who work for Provail, the commitment, the dedication, and the consistency of commitment to the values that drive what we do, that allows Provail to do what it does and to be consistent and effective in our work. So it's about you guys. So thank you. Okay, I think we will wrap up from the Q&A. This was fantastic. Gabe and Glenn and Jose, thank you so much. Glenn, you did a fantastic job. We appreciate you sharing your story with us, talking a little bit about your goals and your choices, and giving people some insight into how Provail is involved in your life. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, and let's keep our hopes going for a good Mariner season. All right, as I said before, Glenn's experiences illustrate to all of us how impactful Provail's work is. Glenn, as you've got a chance to see, is experiencing a life that he directs, full of inclusion and opportunity, because he's got this incredibly robust support system that's been around him for 40 years. Provail's plan is to continue to grow and develop that support system so that we can support more people like Glenn every year. We know that there are thousands of children and adults in need of those supports. Kids in schools who need assistive technology support, high school students who want to find the right paid job as they transition, and young adults who want to live independently. And that need grows every year. The community of people with disabilities grows every year. The scope of the support system is not necessarily keeping up with that growth. So we've developed a really strong strategic plan that calls for us to expand the number of clients that we support significantly. Our goal is to grow the number of clients by 40% over the next couple of years. And that's ambitious. That's a huge task. The great thing is we know how to make that happen. We know the most effective ways to deliver the most important services. And we have the team, and you've met a couple of them tonight, examples of that team in Gabe and Jose. We have the team that we need to take us there. So I'm really optimistic. I think the next 80 years look incredibly bright for Provail. I hope you see that too. I hope you're excited. I hope that you've been inspired by what you've heard tonight, and that you want to support that growth and be involved in the organization. There are opportunities coming in the next few months if that's something that you're interested in. Community support is incredibly valuable to our growth as an organization, and we'd be honored to have your involvement. A few of those opportunities that I want to mention before we close tonight. One is we have a golf tournament coming back up that has been on a 2-year break through the pandemic, but we'll be holding the golf tournament again this year on May 23rd. We're going to be at a new course this year, the Redmond Ridge Golf Course. So if you're interested in golfing, or if you know somebody else who might be interested, or if your company or another company might be interested in being a sponsor and sending a foursome of golfers, you can find more information on our website. And Jessica just dropped a link to that part of the website in the chat. If you can't see that, you just go to our website at provail.org and go to the Get Involved section, and you'll see a link to the Golf Classic. So May 23rd. We sometimes have volunteer opportunities that are available. Hopefully there'll be more coming as we start to get a chance to be together in person in the future. That's another thing you can find information about on our website. So again, go to that section of the website that says Get Involved, and you'll find information about volunteer opportunities, or drop a message in the chat and we'll follow up with you. I think Catherine would be the person getting back to you to let you know what that looks like. If you want to support the organization financially, obviously we would love that. You can do that on the website. You can go to provail.org. There's a Donate Now button. I think it's in the upper left-hand corner. That's an easy way to support what we do financially. And finally, if you were inspired tonight and you know others who you think would be inspired or would like to know more about what we do at Provail, we'd love to have you connect them with us. Share what you learned tonight, share our website with them, and let's get connected with them so we can introduce them to what Provail is all about. Generally our experience is that once people know about this story, and we know not a lot of people know about Provail, we're working to change that, so you can help spread the word and make people more aware. Once they get connected with us, they're going to see how critical the work is that we do. And we think they'll, like all of you, they'll want to get involved in some way. So we appreciate your help with that. So as we get ready to say the final farewell, Terry, I'd love if you would turn your camera back on and join me on screen again. There you are. Hi.
Hi.
So have you got any last words that you would like to say before we wrap it up?
excuse me, I want to echo your appreciation to all the people who joined us tonight. We know that everybody's lives are super busy. So thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Provail story and to meet some of the people that we impact. I'm super grateful to all of our speakers, Glenn and Gabe and Jose, and all of the people who made this possible. Mike, Jessica, you, Kyla, and the rest of the team. And then just lastly, we look forward to seeing all of our friends here again at future Provail events. And we would be so grateful for your continued support.
Yeah, well said. I agree. Absolutely. We are grateful. I think that's a great word. We're grateful that you take the time to learn about us, grateful for whatever support and involvement you might want to have in the future. We like to talk at Provail about the village concept. Inclusion is something that takes a village. It isn't something any one of us can do on our own. So we hope tonight that you'll consider yourself a part of our village and continue to help us work towards maximum inclusion for every person with a disability in our community. So with that, I think we will say thank you again for being here. Hope you have a great night and hope that we will see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Terry.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.